Guys, me again, and welcome to the third episode of Being Bubbly. I am so excited for today's episode because this is honestly the most requested topic I've gotten from all of you is to talk about like pregnancy and everything that comes with that. So I'm really excited to dive into it. Before we get started, don't worry, I still have a lily on. I just decided to wear my lily shorts, one of my favorite blueprints. Um, and then one thing I've noticed, which is pretty vain of me, but watching a few of the episodes back and doing all of the editing, one, I can't listen to myself talk anymore. Like I'm done with that. But two, I was very excited in the first episode to get a haircut, and the way she like blew out the hair and added curls, it was like, oh, I love this new haircut. Watching episode 2 back, I tried to do kind of the same style, did not work. So now I do not like my haircut, and we're gonna try kind of a half slick back bun on top of my head, but we're gonna see how it goes. So, in terms of today's episode, I am going to be focusing in on pregnancy. So I know in episode 2, I shared that the next couple of episodes are going to be more of a series where I have like broken down each part of the journey of having a baby's pregnancy, birth story, postpartum, all of that into different episodes. So today we're going to talk all about pregnancy. I am excited to share some of my hot takes on pregnancy because you honestly should know by now that a lot of things that I have experienced as a 32-year-old adult, I have felt very unprepared for. And pregnancy was definitely, in fact, one of those things. I did not know what to expect. So, yeah, you're going to hear all my thoughts. And then I'm going to break down kind of my own personal journey throughout my pregnancy and share a little bit about that. But before we really dive into kind of the realities of pregnancy, I do want to put a disclaimer out there. I know that this topic it's very personal to women. And obviously, I know that every single person's experience with pregnancy is so different. And honestly, like every single pregnancy for the same person can be very different. And so please know that like I am speaking from the I and my experience. And I completely understand that hearing some of these topics discussed, if it was something that maybe I didn't experience and maybe others have, it can be triggering and a lot of emotions can be felt. So please know I'm speaking from the I, and I'm just really excited to kind of share my experience through pregnancy. I am very aware that my experience I had in this first pregnancy is going to be very different than the experiences I have in future pregnancies. I will say I am one of those annoying people that say how much I loved being pregnant because I truly, truly did. And I did have a very easy pregnancy. So if you are triggered by or annoyed by people that say they loved pregnancy, totally understand. No hard feelings. This might not be the episode for you. That is quite all right. If you want to turn it down, go right ahead. Do make sure it plays all the way through because I do need that view. Views are very important. But the last thing I want to do is upset anyone or annoy anyone. If they're going through a really challenging pregnancy and they're like, this sucks, I do not like it. I do have a feeling that in one of my future pregnancies, that will be me. And so I will listen back to this and be like, wow, Taylor, you really suck. So totally get it. But all right, let's dive in. So in terms of kind of the flow of the episode, again, I kind of want to just talk about the realities of being pregnant. I want to really dive into like some of the symptoms that I was very surprised about and did not expect to experience during pregnancy. And I want to really focus on some of the things that I didn't necessarily know and like throughout pregnancy. And then I want to kind of go through my own pregnancy journey. I know a lot of people have been really interested in just kind of hearing my story. So I'm excited to share there. And that will bring us to the end. One thing to note as well, I'm getting a lot of people writing in different questions for for me to answer on these episodes. I think what I'm going to do is, after kind of this mini series of like all pregnancy related things, I am going to do an episode that's a Q&A based on all of the questions I've gotten about like pregnancy, postpartum, birth experience, and things like that. So yeah. Okay. Realities of being pregnant. I First, I want to say I do have a bone to pick with, I guess it would be Hollywood and any pregnant lady that I've known my entire life, because I did not know a lot about pregnancy before getting pregnant. I obviously knew all of the like symptoms that you hear about or you see about in the movies and on TV, and like you hear from just conversations like morning sickness, your back hurts, you're not really sleeping, you're swollen, kind of all those things. But let me tell you, the different symptoms and things that you feel throughout your entire body is very alarming. There were things that were aching and hurting that I had no idea were even attached to like pregnancy. Like apparently like dental appreciation is very big in pregnancy. Had no idea. So there's so many different things that I was kind of just learning as I was going through this process, or I would feel something and, ask my doctor, and they would be like, oh, yeah, symptom of pregnancy. Well, no one told me that. So, anyone who I have known or any show or movie that I've watched with a pregnant lady, you did not do a good job at portraying the realities of pregnancy. That is, I will stand by that statement. Okay. In terms of some hot takes I have with pregnancy. So I do have a list in front of me because I'm like, I want to make sure I hit all of my big points here. Let's talk about the appointments. First, let's talk about the first initial appointment of pregnancy. Okay. You took the test, you're pregnant, you've celebrated, you're very excited. Next thing you do, you call your doctor, you say that, you're pregnant, you want to come in for your first OB appointment, whatever it might be, right? Well, I thought that they would be like, this is great, come in today at 3 o'clock or come in tomorrow, first thing. No, you have to wait like another 2 to 3 weeks from when you find out you're pregnant to have your first pregnancy appointment. The amount of stress that someone feels leading up to that first pregnancy appointment, between finding out they were pregnant to the first appointment, is crazy. And I am just team, I think we should have those first pregnancy appointments a little bit sooner, because I know I was so anxious and worried until I had that first appointment. And after the first appointment, I was like, great, okay, we're good. I felt so much better. But that was kind of the first surprise where I was like, excuse me, 3 weeks from now? What? That's insane. But I guess that's just how it goes. In terms of the frequency of appointments, in the beginning, you are about a month in between, which again, I just personally, I feel like it's too much time in between. The anxiety, like, does anyone not know the anxiety that a pregnant woman experiences day in and day out in the middle of the night, waking up, like, and especially when it's early on because you can't feel the kick, you're not showing, you're like, is any, like, hello, what is going on down there? So I would like to see, personally, more frequent appointments, but I will say the appointments early on are so exciting. One in for one of the earlier appointments, and apparently you don't get ultrasounds or sonograms. I don't like, I know the two words are related. I don't really understand the difference. I guess sonograms a picture, ultrasounds the thing that happens. I don't know. But what I do know is that doesn't happen every appointment, which is kind of a bummer because I do love seeing the baby and just making sure that everything is looking okay. But early on in one of the appointments, they brought out this like heart Doppler scan. I am not a fan of those things. They work like 3 out of 10 times. And it was always like, oh, we can't necessarily hear the baby's heartbeat, but, we're sure everything's fine. We hear your heartbeat. Everything's going well. Like, I don't care about my heartbeat. I want to make sure you can hear the baby's heartbeat. So I am not a fan of those little Doppler heart monitors. Yes, they are very important. I guess you can buy them and do it yourself at home, but they do not recommend that for anxious people. So myself being anxious, I did not purchase that on Amazon because my luck is I would not be able to figure it out and then I would panic and call my doctor. So I didn't end up doing that. In terms of like my favorite appointments, because you have a lot during pregnancy. Obviously, the first appointment is very exciting, very emotional. You don't really know what to expect. You're just like, please just, confirm that I am pregnant. And that's, really it. Um, I also, oh, okay. So the next kind of big appointment that you do relatively early on, like between weeks 10 and 12, is the genetic testing and like gender testing. I will say this was, and I think we did this like 10 or 11 weeks in. This was the first moment in pregnancy where I can honestly say Kevin and I were very overwhelmed with making a decision. So before you go and when you're scheduling your genetics testing appointment, if you choose to do genetic and gender testing, they give you like all the pamphlets on the different types of tests. And there are a few different variations of like genetic testing that you can do. And so they walk you through all of the different versions of the test. And again, like you're in that prior appointment or the previous appointment and you're just kind of like listening and it's going in one ear and out the other. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. What do you recommend? And I guess they can't necessarily recommend what you do because everyone's, experience is different and everyone's opinions are different. They give you the paperwork to bring home, the pamphlets, and they say, think about it and let us know which genetic test you would like to do. So that was honestly the first moment in pregnancy where we were like, what did we sign up for? Like, we don't know what we're doing. You have to think about the future, and you might not be ready to think about the future at that point in the pregnancy. And it just becomes very real because you are making decisions of like, okay, well, what happens if, we get a negative result? Or what happens if we see something, if something is flagged for us? You need to have those conversations of like, well, what are we going to do? What are the next steps? And that was a really scary part of the pregnancy because we just honestly we didn't know. And we did ask like our parents, what did you do? And I will say that some of the testing that is available now wasn't necessarily available when we were babies or when our moms were pregnant. And so we thought by asking others, it would like help us make a decision. And to be honest with you, it really just kind of like clouded our judgment. And we had to kind of just sit down, the two of us, and be like, okay, let's go through scenarios. What are we going to do? And what does our gut say? And I remember calling the doctor and kind of talking her through the process. And she did say, she was like, I'm not going to try and, tell you what test to do. But she did say, how is your anxiety level? And I was like, well, that's a loaded question because I am a very anxious person. And I actually think my husband is 10 times more anxious than me. And so she did say, in her experience, couples that have a lot of anxiety, the genetic testing, and I think it's the carriers test. So it like extensively goes into all of these different genes and traits and characteristics. She said that some of her patients that are very anxious, if they've done the more intrusive and extensive testing, the more likely it is that like something pops up and it, could be nothing, but because it tests more things between both the mom and the dad, you're more likely to have things kind of come up on the test of like, hey, let's look into this a little bit more. And she said for people with anxiety, like it can mean nothing. So if you are an anxious person, it sometimes makes you more anxious than you need to be. And so that really stuck with us. And we were like, okay, we're not going to do that. We decided to do the NIPT, which is the test for, and I have it in front of me because I want to make sure I get it right. And that is the test that focuses in on looking to see if there's a chromosomal disorder with trisomy 21, trisomy 18, and trisomy 13. So we opted to do that particular test paired with gender testing because we did want to know if we were having a boy or a girl. So that moment in pregnancy was very confusing, very overwhelming. But as soon as we made the decision and as soon as we got the results, we felt very at peace with the choice that we made. In terms of other appointments that I loved, the anatomy scan is very cool. That happens at 20 weeks. I will say it is a little creepy to see your baby in 4D, but that's a really big appointment because it allows the doctor to make sure that like the baby's anatomy is growing how it should be and developing. So you get to see like all of their little organs and body parts, and it is very cool to experience. One thing I will say, because no one told me this going into my anatomy scan, that if the baby does not want to cooperate, one, that's normal. Two, you have to keep going back until they can get all the photos. So I went in thinking, we were going to get like a clean bill of health, everything was going to be good. And Miss Millie did not want to behave and decided she was like rolled up like a pretzel. So they couldn't see like half of the anatomy that they needed to. So I had to go back a second time and then went back the second time. Same thing. Little Millie decided she, wanted to roll and be a pretzel the other way. And so then they couldn't get the other photos that they needed. I ended up going in for my anatomy scan 4 different times. Now, I'm not complaining because that meant 4 different appointments where I did get to have an ultrasound with her. So any opportunity for an ultrasound, I was like, yes, sign me up. But yeah, she made me go in 4 different times. Of course, knock on wood, everything looked great. But that was just also another piece that, no one prepared me for, is like, don't worry if your baby is not cooperating, like it's totally fine. No one told me that. So now I'm telling you. Okay, glucose test. This is an unpopular opinion. I actually did not mind the glucose test. So my nurse, she was a gem. She thought I was hysterical because I was like drinking it, and you have to drink it, I think, in a span of like 5 minutes. And I just like kept having like PTSD from being at like a frat party in college, like at some frat house, and like drinking jungle juice from like one of those orange Gatorade bins that was in someone's bathtub. Like that's what the juice tasted like. And so like I just kept like telling her stories about like, I guess, my college life. I don't know, but she was cracking up. But yeah, I didn't mind it. And don't be alarmed if you fail the first time, because guess what? I did. And here's why I believe I failed. When you go in for your glucose test, they say like don't do anything different that like than you would normally do that morning. So I did it. I woke up, I had my cup of coffee, I had my 2 chocolate chip Eggo waffles. I went in for the test. Looking back, I'm pretty sure the Eggo waffles set me up to fail this glucose test. But they did say, like, don't change your diet for the test because we need to see, like, if you have gestational diabetes. So that's just my little plug there. Maybe don't eat an Eggo waffle, or definitely don't eat 2 Eggo waffles before you take your glucose test. So I did have to do the 3-hour test, which I was so upset about, like sobbed that I failed my first glucose test. Again, in hindsight, not a big deal. It was another appointment that I didn't have to go to work, and I sat in a comfy chair for 3 hours and watched TV. So it wasn't too bad, but I did end up passing the 3-hour glucose test. I did not have any Eggo waffles that morning. So if there's anything you take from this episode, do not have waffles before your glucose test because you will fail. So after the glucose test, you're kind of in your mid 20-week range. And those appointments were fine. You go in, they now have the measuring tape, not measuring tape, but like it's like a fabric measurer, and they measure your belly, which is, I guess, exciting-ish. I don't know. I didn't really like it, but they measure your belly. They ask you, how are you feeling? Anything you want to discuss? And that's basically it. Like those appointments in like your late 20s to early 30s are pretty boring. Not a lot happens. You don't really have any more scans in that phase of the pregnancy, which I also did not like because I feel like that is when a lot of things are developing and growing. And so I feel like I would have really liked to have eyes on what's happening, especially because I went into preterm labor. So perhaps if we had a little bit more insight into what Miss Millie was doing in there, we could have prevented that. But that's all right. So yeah, appointments in like your late 20s, early 30s, they happen more frequently, which I was very excited about. You now are in like they were happening every 2 weeks. And then once you hit like your mid 30s is when they're happening every week. Again, I didn't get to that point, but I do know they are very frequent once you get towards the end. A couple appointments that I personally never got to because I didn't make it past uh 32 weeks before I was in the hospital. Apparently, there's a very big appointment called the strep test. I'm very thankful that I did not have that appointment. But actually, now that I think about it, I think they did that when I was in the hospital. So scratch that. Actually, I feel like I did have that. It's a very invasive thing. I will say pregnancy is, ladies, it's very invasive. I am a person that I am very uncomfortable with my body and all things. And so I just remember showing up at every appointment, just being very uncomfortable. Um, Pregnancy is very invasive and it is what it is. So now I want to jump into some symptoms that I experienced that I was very unaware about. Okay, number one, acid reflux. This was probably my biggest symptom I had in pregnancy. And can I just say, it is terrible. So I'm not talking like acid reflux. You had like, a very like rich dinner or something that's like not sitting well. I am talking about for 2 months, you are up every single night because anytime you lay horizontal, you have coughing fits on top of coughing fits on top of coughing fits. You constantly feel like there is something burning in your chest and you can't get rid of it. I remember thinking like I full blown had like bronchitis or pneumonia. And I called my aunt, who's a nurse practitioner, and I was like, am I dying? Like, what is going on? And she's just like, oh no, like acid reflux, GERD or something. She's like, no, very normal. Normal to who? No one told me. No one told me. So now I'm telling you, ladies, be careful for that acid reflux. Have the Tums ready to go because it was brutal. And on top of that, it was my best friend's bachelorette. And so obviously in a bachelorette, like you're crammed into rooms like sardines. And so I was with four of my girlfriends and I just remember feeling so terrible because I was coughing all night. And I remember them being like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like we had no idea that this was like a thing. So again, acid reflux is a very real thing in the pregnancy world. That one took me by surprise. I touched on this in the beginning, just echoing the sharp pains you feel throughout your body from like just like your fingertips to your toes to your ears to your teeth. Like everything hurts and everything hurts at different times. And it's these weird, sharp little pains. It is so bizarre. Again, not complaining. Like, well, this I am complaining, but I will say it wasn't terrible, but it was surprising. I did not expect it, is what I'm trying to say. I did not know that like every part of your body is changing when you get pregnant. I honestly just thought it was your belly. I don't know if I'm living under a rock or what, but everything hurts and everything hurts at different times. So when you fix one part of your body, get ready for the next thing. Sleep, you are tired obviously throughout the day and then you're like nocturnal at night. That's just something that happens. So I would honestly do a lot of late night Amazon panic orders online, watched a lot of Friends episodes. My screen time was outrageous in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep. Um, Maternity clothes. Okay, so I was that bitch that was like, I I refused to wear maternity clothes. I thought I was better than maternity clothes. I'm like, no, I can like make my regular wardrobe work until like the very end and until I have to. I even would buy new clothes, not maternity, and size like one or two up. I will say that lasted me a while. Um, I do recommend going to wherever you get your jeans. I love Gap jeans and J. Crew jeans, but I did get jeans like normal, like kind of like baggy mom jeans in two sizes larger than what like my normal pre-pregnant pregnancy size was. And I wore those for a while. And those are what I wear postpartum. Like those are only what fit me now. So I am very glad that I did that because I have the mindset of like, I was wearing these before the baby was here. And now I'm wearing them after the baby was here. Even though they were 2 sizes larger than what I normally used to wear. That is a distant memory, that size. But yeah, I do recommend doing that. But I will say, once I switched over to maternity clothes, man, are they comfortable. The belly bands, you have room. They're very soft. I do recommend getting maternity clothes early on, especially like cozy leggings and sweatpants. I was at the phase where I needed like maternity clothes in the fall. So, baggy sweaters, cardigans, things like that. I did really like maternity clothes and actually still wear some of my maternity clothes. Kevin's like, we need to put these away because they are not flattering, but I still wear them. I actually think I have a maternity. No, I have a nursing bra on right now, actually. So yeah, you do get to wear some of the clothes that you wear during pregnancy and early on postpartum forever. So little plus there. In terms of baby stuff and registries, my tip for you, and this is what I wish I did, is like talk to your friends and family members that have had babies and have had registries because there's so many things that like you think that you need and you want to put on your registry. And then after the baby's here, you use it like once or twice or don't even use it. And you're like, that was, such a waste. Like, I wish that I had something else because, someone very graciously bought you that item. And so you want them to spend money on things that you're going to use. So I would definitely recommend like ask around like what worked best for people. Ask multiple people because, what worked well for one family might not work well for the other family. But at least you get kind of like an idea. I will say I do wish I put more like 6+ months stuff on my registry. That's when like the developmental play really comes in. That's just like what the amount of like Amazon purchases I had from, honestly the entire time. But I just wish I had more stuff kind of ready to go when Millie was ready for like the next phase of toys or clothes or whatever it might be. Everyone gets everything for the newborn and the newborn clothes and the bottles and things like that, but definitely try and space out clothing for sizes and then some of those like more developmental appropriate toys for later on when the child's, a little bit older. Oh, that's my Slack. I didn't turn it off. Gift cards, gift cards, gift cards, gift cards. If you get gift cards for your registry or put gift cards on your registry, save them. Save them post baby because what's going to happen is you're going to be up pumping and or breastfeeding and you're going to be scrolling on your phone and you're going to start looking at Amazon and you're not going to have any gift cards because you spent them early on. Save the gift cards until the baby is here because then you'll really know what you need. We used one type of bottle. There were certain sleep sacks that didn't work for her. So again, save those gift cards because once you find out what the baby likes and what works for her and you'll be able to use your gift cards and your husbands will thank you because then you won't be spending all your money on Amazon. Okay. That's honestly, I feel like is it in terms of my opinions on pregnancy, my hot takes on pregnancy, my recommendations for pregnancy. I know as soon as I end this call, I'm going to think of a million other things. That's okay. I'm hoping that in future episodes, I can have more episodes dedicated to this, but also have others come on the podcast and kind of share their experiences with you all. Okay, so let's jump into my pregnancy journey. Again, a lot of people are really excited to kind of hear my story. I said it in the beginning of the episode. I loved pregnancy. I really did. I truly felt like I was made to be a pregnant woman. I was the best version of myself. I felt like my skin was glowing. I was able to nap whenever I wanted to nap. And not only was I able to nap when I wanted to nap, I would have people tell me that I should go take a nap. That never happens. So I really I loved being pregnant, especially if you are the first person in your family. And for me, we're the first person on both sides of the family to have a baby. And so, like, you really are treated like a queen. I have to say, I loved it. Sets the bar very high for any, sisters that you have. I did promise them, though, I said I will repay the favors that they did for me. So, yeah, I loved pregnancy. Honestly, I felt so happy and excited that I was pregnant. And like, I just remember like that was honestly like the most calm and stress-free point, I think, my entire life. I think that was like the best time in Kevin and my relationship, just because like, he was very aware of I was pregnant, so he didn't want to stress me out or upset me because I would cry. So I will say like things were very calm. I'm a very anxious person. And pregnancy really zened me out. I don't know what it was. I don't know if I was just afraid to get super anxious, so I didn't, but I was a very calm and peaceful person in my pregnancy. At least I would like to think so. I guess you have to ask my husband and family members, but I think they would agree. So, in terms of kind of Kevin and our story, we had gotten married in October. So we were not necessarily trying, but we had recently had the conversation of like, okay, if we were to get pregnant, like we feel like we would be as ready as we could be. Like we are open to the conversation and like open to starting the process of trying because I did know that it could take a while. And so I did get pregnant 6-ish months after our wedding. I did originally want to wait like a year. I wanted to go on our honeymoon. We were supposed to go to Italy. And I just was like, I really don't want to go to Italy pregnant because then I can't indulge in the wine and cheese that I was very much looking forward to do. But like after a couple of months, like we just kind of had this feeling that we were like, okay, like we're ready to start thinking about this. Probably a month prior to getting pregnant, I did start those ovulation strips. I don't know. I like Googled and they just like came up of like, this is what people do when they're, thinking about having a baby. You want to start like tracking things. So I did start using the strips, which actually I found very cool. They like measure all the different levels and everything. And then literally the next month, I did get pregnant. Again, I am very much aware that that is not everyone's journey and that is not everyone's story, that it does not happen right away. For us, this time it did. And, who's to say that it's going to happen that quickly in our future pregnancies? Just like really speaking to this time around, it happened very quickly for us. So I found out I was cleaning out the bottom of our sink and I had like a bunch of pregnancy boxes. Again, just I bought some to just kind of like try out. And I was like, oh, let me get rid of these boxes. And there was one left. So I'm like, all right, let me, pee on the stick. So I did. And then I was like, oh, let me take a shower. And typically, like I did for every time I took a pregnancy test, like I would forget about them for like hours, sometimes even days, like forget that I actually took the test. Again, that just goes to show like I honestly, I don't even know why I bought them because they're very expensive and it was a waste of money if we actually like weren't really trying. But I remember being in the shower and something just kept like bringing me back to the pregnancy test and something like made me open the shower door and take a look. And any other tests that I took always said like not pregnant. I always got the digital ones. So I opened the shower door and it said pregnant. There was no not there. So I very quickly closed the shower door and was just like, okay, wow, this is really happening. Had a minor freak out, but honestly, I was so happy and I was so excited. I did wait to tell my husband for a week, and here's why. I knew I wanted to do something. I wanted to tell him in like a cute way, and I wanted to get a customized onesie. So as soon as I got out of the shower, I, panic ordered, overnight shipped an Etsy order, paid a ridiculous amount of money for a onesie that Millie's literally never worn. And I texted one of my really good work friends who had a baby and I was just like, hey, took this test. I think I'm pregnant. Like, SOS, what do I do? So she was the only other person that knew. She walked me through everything. Like, she was my sounding board. So she was great. And then I did end up telling one more person at work, same thing. Like, I was just like, I need to like kind of form my own little crew here because I'm going crazy not telling Kevin. So I finally get the onesie, and in typical Taylor and Kevin fashion, it's just how we operate. I had a whole plan to tell him. I think it was like a Thursday. And I don't know. He did something that like pissed me off. And I was just like, I'm not doing this tonight. And I was mad at him. So I was just like, no, we're not even doing this. So then the next day I made a whole new plan. We were golfing. So I had this whole plan to tell him because we were golfing, just the two of us. And then we ended up golfing with my cousins. So then I was like, okay, well, I can't tell him with my cousins there. So that squashed that. And then Saturday, I'm like, no matter what, this is the day I need to tell him. I can't keep it in any longer. Well, that day was the day that Kevin decided he was going to do a DIY project that he learned on TikTok and build us a patio. Again, if you take anything from this episode, take this advice. Do not trust TikTok when it comes to DIYing a patio. I don't know what facade they're showing you, but it does not work. He got all the stuff, said, I'm going to do this. I said, okay, let's see how this goes. And I thought, maybe it would go well and we can tell him after. So in order to do a patio, you need to get like one of the heavy machinery rolly things. So he went to Home Depot, he rented it. They helped him, put it in the truck. He gets home. He didn't think about he now has to get it out of the truck. This thing, like not even kidding, must have been like 150 pounds. Like it was so heavy and it was so massive. And he's like, I need you to help me get this thing out of the truck. I'm pregnant, obviously very early on. And so I was like afraid to do anything. And like Google, right, is telling you don't do anything out of the ordinary. Like don't work out a crazy amount. Don't, do anything you wouldn't do on a normal day. Well, on a normal day, I'm not lifting heavy machinery. So I didn't want to do that when I was pregnant. So I just kept telling him, like, I can't lift it. It's too heavy. And like, I was sobbing. Hormones. And he was so mad. He's like, I don't understand like why you can't help me with this, whatever. So I ended up lifting it. And then I'm sobbing even more because I'm afraid I did something. He tries to do the patio. It's spoiler alert, does not work out. He's in a bad mood. We now have to put the machine back into the truck. So now I'm back to crying because I'm helping him lift it into the truck. And he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? So finally, after things, tensions calmed down, I was like, I have to tell him, like, I can't. So I was like, let's go for a walk. Before he came inside, I quickly like put everything out on the counter. I got him a little customized onesie and a little book, and I had the pregnancy test on the counter. So he walked in, was shocked, like truly, truly shocked, did not believe it, did not believe me. And so I ran upstairs and got this like shopping bag that was filled with, I'm not even kidding, like 35 pregnancy tests that I took that week to just ensure. Like I was taking like 3 a day, which now that I'm thinking about it, probably like $200-$300 worth of pregnancy tests in that bag just to like make myself okay, because it was like, let me just make sure. But he was so excited. And so, the stress of the week and the stress of the day leading up to that moment was so amazing. And so then we were able to kind of celebrate together, and just like that, our life in like one instant completely changed. So that was really fun. In terms of telling our families, we told each family privately and in different ways. And honestly, like that was my favorite part of doing all of the different like pregnancy, reveals. If you do more intimate, smaller announcements, you get to keep having them. And so that was really fun. So we told each of our families. They were all so excited. Like I said, Millie's the first grandchild within the family. And so like everyone was just blown away, and very, very excited. For gender, Kevin is still mad at me for this, but when you do the gender testing with the genetics testing, it all comes back in one test. And so like you get the message on the app. And so when you open it, like right at the top, it tells you the gender. So if you're doing a gender reveal or you don't want to know, have someone else look at the test results because it's right there. I knew this and I still chose to look at it. I got the notification on my app. I was at work in a meeting And I got the notification, and like my anxious self, like there was, important genetic testing results on there. So I went to the bathroom and opened it and saw that we were having a little girl uh, in a school bathroom. I was by myself. I will say this. We thought my entire pregnancy that we were having a boy. Like we were convinced, other people were convinced. Like we actually were starting to call the baby Charlie because I was like, I love that name. If we have a boy, I want the name to be Charles. So we were just referring to the baby as baby Charlie, and like 100% convinced it was a boy because my symptoms were like so mild, right? All the old wives' tales and everything. So when I saw that I was having a girl, like I will say, like, gender disappointment is a very real thing. And not that I was disappointed that I was having a girl, because like, hello, me, pink Lily, like, I like saw the future flash before my eyes. But I had wrapped my head around being like a boy mom for a few months at that point. And so like it was a little bit of a shift for me. And then I told Kevin in a way. I got a pink lacrosse stick, some pink balloons, and then a little cake that says it's a girl. And he was very excited, but I could tell there was a little bit of like gender disappointment there, but he like wouldn't admit it. And I was like, it's okay. Not sad. I didn't know how to feel, but I was just like, oh, that wasn't what I expected. Now looking back, I'm like, Kevin is a girl dad. He is made to be a girl dad. Like Millie has him wrapped around her little finger. It was obviously meant to happen, but it's just funny that like we thought it was going to be the complete opposite of what it was. But yeah, so that's how we found out we were having a girl. And then we did do little gender reveals, like again, very intimate and private settings. Kevin was very adamant about not doing like a big gender reveal, like big party, which was fine. And honestly, after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. There was a minor car accident that I got in, fender bender. I was completely fine. There was no damage to my car. The poor girl behind me was texting. She was trying to get to class. I felt so bad. She was doing everything that everyone else does on the road. And so because I was, I think at that point, like 28 weeks pregnant, when you get into like a motor vehicle accident or you fall or you trip, and you're that late in your pregnancy, they do have you go in for monitoring. So they had me go into the hospital and kept me overnight just to make sure that everything was okay. And I will say, I guess it is a thing at some hospitals to do like a tour of the labor and delivery wing of the hospital. I had never heard that before, but I am so grateful that I got into this car accident because it allowed me to get said tour of the labor and delivery wing. And I met like the doctors and the nurses. I just was able to kind of visualize the space. And let me tell you, like what happens in a hospital is crazy. I didn't know what to expect being in a hospital. And so to have the opportunity to just kind of like see how things go, see the room, see where I'm going to be delivering the baby, that eased my anxiety and like made me feel so much better and so much more ready to have her. So if your hospital does tours, please go in for the tour because it is very worth it. And after that, it was not a worry in the world until boom, 32 weeks, went in for my 32-week checkup and preterm labor. So we're going to pause it there because I'm going to pick up where we left off in our next episode and talk about just like my birth experience that started with the preterm labor hospitalization. But yeah, I had a pretty basic, normal, easygoing pregnancy from 0 to 32 weeks. And then after that, it was game over. That is kind of my experience with pregnancy. And I've gotten some really amazing questions where I'll dive a little bit deeper into more of like the intimate details just about like my thoughts on pregnancy, my thoughts on, future pregnancies and where I am with that, with having another baby. So know that, all of those questions are going to be answered in a future episode. I can't wait for the next episode of Being Bubbly. If you do not already follow me on social media at Being Bubbly Pod on Instagram and TikTok, please do. And if you can give this video or audio recording a thumbs up, 5 stars, a comment, please do. So, to that, cheers to being bubbly. Bye.